Hello beautiful viewers, you are welcome to the channel once again. In the two videos that I've made, I've shown you the project that we are going to, or I'm working on, and I've started showing you how to design such a project, okay, using PHP, MySql and other programming language. So if this is the first time that you are watching me, or you are watching this video from the channel and you have not subscribed, please do well and subscribe for me, and make sure you watch the other two videos that I've created or I've uploaded earlier, so that you understand what you are going to do. Okay, in that video I showed you the database that I'm working on and how to start creating it. Okay, I've taught you how to download XAMPP and install it on your PC, and I've shown how to download a text editor, being it Visual Code or Notepad++. Okay, so any of these two text editor can be used for whatever you are going to do for the coding. Okay, so you can decide to download Notepad++ or Visual Code. Okay, now before you can design what I'm going to design, I've asked you to download XAMPP and install it on your PC. So the first thing that you have to do when you want to start with your project is you have to start the XAMPP control panel. Okay, so if you open the control panel, this is what you are going to see. And in the other video I said if you open it like this, you have to start the Apache first. So if you see the numbers or the port numbers reading, it means it's active. Then you move on to the MySql. You start that one too. Then when the numbers are reading, it means that one too is active. So one of the ways that you have to confirm whether they are active is to open your browser. Then the search address, just type localhost /phpmyadmin. Okay, phpmyadmin. Okay, type it there, press enter. So if the Apache and MySql are active, this page is supposed to load for you. Okay, now it has opened. It means the Apache and MySql are running actively, so we can create our database, do whatever that we want to do. So that's why you have to download the XAMPP and install it. The XAMPP is going to serve as a local server. Okay, a server on your device. A local server, when I mean a local server, meaning it is on your PC. We have a remote server and a local server. A remote server is on the internet. That one you have to buy a hosting account before you get it. So maybe the project that we are working on, there is no need for us to purchase a hosting or a remote server. We can use XAMPP, and XAMPP can serve as a server for us, because in the other video I said PHP and MySql runs on a server. So without a server we cannot use PHP and that of MySql. So that's why we are using XAMPP. So XAMPP is serving as a local server to run our application on. Okay, thank you for understanding. So let's move on. In that video we say we are going to use, or we created a database known as test_database. Okay, so this is our database, and I also showed you how to create a directory file or folder where we'll be keeping all our PHP files in it. Okay, so now I presume you have all those things in place. So let's visit our folder or directory where we'll be writing our PHP file. You go to your local disk, then look for XAMPP, then look for HT docs. You open it, then you look for the folder we created. The folder we created, we say we're going to rename it test underscore LNG, so meaning test underscore learning. Okay, so open it. So in this folder we are going to have all our PHP files in it. Okay, we're going to have our PHP files in it. So now that we have our database in phpmyadmin, now it is time for us to use PHP code to link this database to link our database in my PHP admin. Okay, so now we've created the database over here with the help of MySql. So we have to link the database, okay, with the PHP admin. Don't forget that one of the ways that we can use PHP is to manipulate database, or we can use it to connect database. So we are going to use PHP code to connect to our database in my PHP admin. Okay, so we are going to use PHP to connect this database. So let's see how we can do that. So we'll be writing all those PHP files in the directory folder that we created. Okay, I've shown you how to do that. If you don't know how to do it, go and watch the other video. Okay, now when you come here, just when you open the folder, make sure you are inside the test underscore learning folder. Okay, open it. When you're inside that folder, just right click on that, you go to new, you will go to test document. So test document, you have to give a name to that. So what we are going to do will be database db underscore. So this test, let me delete it and start again. Let me delete the whole thing. So right click, go to new, select test document, then the name will be db, name it as you see on the screen, then the extension should be php. Okay, that's the file extension for php code. So it should be, so to ask you if you want to, if you change the file name extension, the file might become unusable. Don't worry, just click yes. Okay, so now this is a PHP file. So from here we will be writing our first PHP code. So how do we do that? Just right click on that, then go to, you can choose here open with visual code if you want to use visual code, but for me I want to use edit with notepad. Okay, so you can use any text editor that you prefer. So here I'm going to use notepad plus. So if you right click on that like this, if you right click on that, then I go to edit with notepad plus. So I click on that, it's open for me. So I have to write my PHP code over here. Okay, I'm gonna have to write it over here. So now for you to write your first PHP code, you need a special PHP syntax. Okay, a syntax in PHP tells the server that this is a PHP code, so run it as such. Okay, so the syntax, the open syntax is going to be less than sign with question mark, sorry, with question mark, then write PHP. Okay, write PHP, then come press enter, come down. So this is the first syntax for writing a PHP file. Okay, so this syntax will tell the server that this is a PHP file or folder or code. You want it as such. Okay, it's not going to read it as other programming language. It will tell the server this is a PHP code, so we run it as such. Now, for us to connect our database, it means we need to get a server name, we need to get username, we need to get a password, we need to get our database name. Okay, and because we are using localhost or we are using XAMPP, all our password or username or server name is going to be a localhost. Okay, we are going to get it from the localhost, and I'll tell you the username for localhost, I'll tell you the password for localhost, then your database name, how to connect it. Okay, so here we need to define our variables. Okay, for us to connect our database using the PHP code, we need to define our variables in the PHP code that we are writing. The variables that I'm talking about in PHP or in programming means, when we say variable, we are just saying that a container for holding a data. Okay, so in coding or in programming, when we say variable, we are talking about a container that we use to hold data. And to write a variable name in PHP, you need to start the variable name with a $sign. Okay, that is that. So let's see. So $sign, we're going to have our $sign here. Then we define our variable. So here the variable that we're going to define here is going to be server name. Okay, server name. One thing that I have to bear in mind, variable names, there are no space between them. It can never start with a number. Okay, it can never start with a number, but it can start with underscore. Okay, so the variable name can never start with a number, but it can start with underscore, and there shouldn't be any space between the variable name. Okay, now we have to assign a value for that. As I said, variables are meant for holding a data, right? So we have to assign a value to that particular variable name that we've created. We said we used to hold a data, or we use it to contain a data. So this is the variable name that we've created. Okay, this is the variable name that we've created. Then we have to assign a value. We have to use it to hold particular data, and so over here we are going to use it to hold the server name. So what is the server name that we are working on? The server that we are using here is what? Localhost. It is what? Localhost. It is not a remote server, it's a local host on your PC. Okay, so the name of your server is going to be localhost, so write as it is. Okay, so localhost, sorry, I have to put it in quotation marks. Okay, so we have localhost, we have localhosts, then we have localhosts, then the next one we have to get our username. Okay, so username, the variable for username, as I said, starts with the $sign. So you write username. That one you have to assign a value to it. the value here, the username for a localhost server is root. Okay, if you are using a remote server, that one you have to create a username and create your user password. But because you are using localhost, which is from XAMPP, the username is root. Okay, don't choose anything. Make sure your username is what? Root. Okay, don't choose any username. Okay, it's root. Username is root. Now we have to, once we have a username, we should get a password. So we're going to define our password variable. We have $, then we have password. Then we need to assign a value to it. The value is going to be, now a password in the localhost is always empty. Okay, so just have it like this. It's always empty. Then it's going to be like this. It's always empty. Now our database name. So database is going to be db. Sorry, I didn't define it, so you have to start with the $, db, then name. So this stands for database name. We assign a value to it. It is going to be our database. So here is going to be the name of your database that you are working on. Okay, it's going to be the name of the data. So what's the name of your database? So we come to my phpmyadmin, look for the name of your database. Make sure you type the same thing, because we are using that PHP file to connect to this database, to communicate with this database. So make sure your database name is the same as what you type in the code. Okay, so the database name is what? Let's check it again. I think it's test. It's test_db. Okay, so it's going to be test_db, right? _db. You should be saving them as and when you write them. Okay, so Control S, we save our code in the file. Okay, now let's see. Now that we've defined our variables, okay, we have defined our variables and we've assigned values to them. So what we can do here is to create a connection using those variables. So I'm going to comment it out. So a comment in PHP means those line of code will never be executed by the server. Okay, a comment, that when you say a comment, it's a group of codes or line of code that will not be executed by the server. Mostly the developer use it as a heading, or to remind themselves what they were thinking when they were writing the code. So it could be like maybe a heading in your code. Okay, it's like a heading in your code. Okay, so to write a comment or to comment some section of your PHP code, you have to start with 2//. Okay, 2// as you can see on the screen. Okay, so let me zoom it out for you to see. Okay, so here, this is what I mean. So we start with this. Okay, so that is that. So here I'm going to say create connection. Okay, So if somebody comes into my coding, the person will be able to understand what I mean over here. It will tell the person that I was trying to connect to my database using these variables. Okay, now to connect it to your database, okay, using PHP file, we need to use an object in PHP. Sorry, an object in MySql. Okay. Sorry, we have to use an object in MySql. As I said, and MySql is a database application that we use to make or develop database, okay, or we use in web development. So for us to connect to our database, we need an object in that database that will help us to connect it to that particular database that we are trying to do using PHP file. Okay, so the object that we're going to use here is going to be a variable name with, let's say, connect. Okay, CNN. Then we assign a value to it. It's going to be the object that we are using in MySql is going to be new MySql. I said we are going to use MySql object to connect to our database. Okay, MySql then we have to connect it using, so we're going to connect it using the variables that we've defined over here. Okay, so let's see how we can do. Open brackets. So open brackets. So now we're going to use this object in MySql. This object, we're going to use it to connect to our database. Here we're going to use it to connect our database using this variables that we've defined. Okay, so we have to define our parameter. So here we have our dollar. So the variable name, as I said, you have to start with a dollar. So server name is going to connect it using the server name, right? You're going to connect it again using what? Username. I know you are not confused. It's going to do that using password, right? So we're going to use password. We're going to use the database name. Okay, so DB name. So we're going to use the database name. To do the connection. So as I said, this object over here, let me zoom it out for you to see. So this object in MySql is going to connect to the database using this parameter or these variables that we've defined here. And don't forget that we've already defined the server name, the username. Sorry, I've made a mistake. There is server name here. So we have the server name, we have the username, we have the password, and we have the database name. So it's going to connect it using this one and using the credentials that we've provided over here. Okay, it's going to communicate to your local host to see if there's a database being created over here. So if there is a database being created, then you should communicate with it, or you should connect to that particular database. So that's what we've done over here. Using this object in MySQL, we're able to connect to a database in MySQL, okay, using PHP file. So this is an object oriented in MySQL. There are so many ways that we can connect to a database. You can use object oriented, you can use PHP data operation, and so on and so forth. Okay, so one of the ways that we can do is to use MySQL objects oriented, and we have procedural way of connecting to our database. But for me, I prefer using the objects aspect of MySQL. If you want to learn more about how to use MySQL, the procedural and other ways of connecting to a database, you can visit my W3 or W3 school for more learning on that. Okay, so over there we give free tuition on programming language, so you can learn PHP from there, you can learn JavaScript, and so on and so forth from there. So if you want to learn how to connect a database using PHP or MySQL, you can go to that website, www.w3school.com. okay, and over there you can learn so many things from there. So this is how we can connect to our database using this credential that we've provided. Essentially, what we are trying to tell the PHP file is that connect to our database using these credentials. Okay, so that's what we've done technically. So let's continue. Now, after connecting to the database, you have to check the connection, whether it has been connected successfully or not. If it has been connected successfully, then we should move on. If there is something wrong with it, then we should revisit our code and amend it. Now, so let's see, we are going to create a comment here. The comment I'm going to say check connection. Okay, so check connection. Now, so to check connection, we're going to use a property in this, okay, in this variable that we've created. We're going to use a property to check if everything that we provided here, there is something wrong with it, especially maybe the username, or there's no database name test, then there should be an error message prompting us that something is wrong with the credential that we've provided. So we're going to use a property for this variable here, this object that we've created over here, or the variable that we've created over here. It has a property, and that property will help us to do. So let's use an if statement. So let's check if. So what we're going to do here, we're going to say that check so if the credentials that we've provided, so we're going to check for us to connect that property. So we're going to use that property, which is connect so So if all the credentials that we've provided over here, or what we provided here, there's something wrong with it, we're going to tell the PHP that, or we're going to use a property to check if the credentials over here that we provided, there is an issue with it. Then there should be an error message, there should be something to prompt us. Okay, so we're gonna use the property die, which has an error message in them, or in it. It has an error message. So if the credentials that we've provided, there is something wrong with it, it's going to tell us connection failed. Okay, so we are saying that if the credential that we provided, there is something wrong with it, then it should tell us where those messages are coming from. So the MySQL will go and pull out what went wrong in connecting to the database. Okay, so we're going to pull it out. So we have this, so it's going to pull it out, that error message. So it's going to tell us where the message or the wrong message is coming from. Okay, underscore error. Underscore error. Okay, so now that we've connected to our database, we need to close the syntax for the PHP, and to close it, equal to question mark, and then the greater than sign. Okay, so that is that. So now we've been able to connect to our database using this credentials that we've provided over here. So we are saying that check the connection. We are saying that if the credentials that we provided here, check. So in connecting it, if any of the credentials that we provided is incorrect, then there is a property in this object. We are going to use it to pull out that error message. Okay, so to pull out that error message, we're going to write this connection failed, then MySQL is going to pull out, okay, it's going to pull out where that error is coming from, because don't forget this is the property for this object. So MySQL will tell you where the error is coming from or what caused the error. So that's why we have this variable being pulled out in this statement, okay. Okay, so this is the code for connecting to our database. I believe you are okay with it. Let me zoom out. So let me zoom it for you to see what is written. So you start with the syntax, the open tag for PHP, less than sign, question mark. Make sure you don't leave any space. Then we define our variables, okay. So we're going to connect to our database using this credential. So the server name is going to be localhost. Make sure it's small caps. The username is going to be root. It's supposed to be root. Password empty, no space in it. The database, this is the name of your database that we've created in my phpmyadmin, okay. This one, make sure you type the exact name that you created with, okay. So now that you've defined your variables, you need to create a connection, okay. So here is creating the connection, and so the heading, which I've commented, or a comment in PHP means those code of line will not be executed by the server. Mostly we use it for heading. So here I've said create connection. So we are creating the connection to our database. So we're going to communicate with our database using PHP. Okay, so we're going to use these credentials that we provided. Now this is the variable that we've used, which is an object assigned to an object in MySQL. So we use this object in MySQL to connect to our database using this credential. So we've already defined the variables over here. So we have the server name. So we are saying that it should connect to our database using the server name, username, password, database. Okay. Now in checking the connection, we want the PHP to check if the credentials that we provided here are correct, okay. So if they are correct, then it should be able to connect it for us. So we're going to use a property for this variable here, and it's a property that pulls out an error message in our code if something goes wrong, okay. So this property for this one is going to check. So we are saying that if the if statement, we are saying that we are using the if statement, we are saying that it should check if in connecting the database any of the credentials are not correct. It should pull out that error message for us. So that's why we use it over here. So this is the property for the variable over here that we've defined, okay. So in that of the property, we use it the die. So if everything is wrong or if something goes wrong, the die over here will just, so it's a function, okay, it's an inbuilt PHP function. It will just stop executing the rest of the code, okay. It will just stop it. The die function over here is going to stop executing the rest of the code, okay. Because in connecting to the database, if the database name is incorrect, then there shouldn't be a continuation of executing the codes. So that's why we are using an inbuilt PHP function known as die, okay. So if in connecting the database something goes wrong, then there should be connection failed. That should be the message, connection failed. Then we pull out this property, okay, for this, or we should let PHP MySql tell us where the error is coming from or what caused the error. That's why we are pulling out this variable. We are calling out this variable. Okay, so we are saying that this dive function should stop executing the rest of the code and pull out where the error is coming from. That's why we've called out this particular property for this variable. Okay, so make sure you write your code like this, perfectly like what you see on the screen. Don't change anything. Okay, if you want to connect it successfully, this is how you can connect your database using PHP. So after doing it, then you have to close your tag or your syntax. Okay, you have to close your PHP syntax. So this is the closing syntax or tag for PHP. You close it, you save it. Now let's see what we've done, if it is correct or wrong. What we have to do here is to open your browser. Okay, so open your browser. We're going to see if what we've done is correct. You open our browser, then you type localhost / then what is the directory where your PHP is being found? What is the name of that folder? The directory folder. What is the name? The name is test_learning. Okay, so we're going to do localhost / test_learning and lng / then let's see the PHP for how did we save it in that directory. So you open it and see how you save it. So we have database db.php. okay, so db.php, enter. Now if you press enter, if you don't see anything, if you see an empty screen like this, it means the connection or the code that we wrote is perfect. It means our database has been connected successfully. Now let me change something from the code. Let me say the database name. Okay, let me make a space in the password. Okay, and save it, and let's go back, refresh it. You see, it's going to pull out this error message for you. You see, warning, deny user roots at localhost using password yes in CSS test online, connection failed, access denied for user root host using password yes. It means the password that you've created here, if you make or if you bring a space between this, it means that you've set the password to yes. So what is the password that you've created? But in localhost, most of the password is empty. Okay, we don't set it to yes, we have to close it. Okay, if you close it and go back and refresh it, it means that error message will go. You see, so this is how we can connect to. So this is how this if and then the property for this variable is helping us to pull out an error message when connecting to our database. Let's try something else and see. If you add something to the database, change the database name. Let's see, refresh it. You see, if you refresh it, it's a connection failed. Then it is telling us unknown database. Unknown, it means it doesn't know your database, it doesn't exist in your phpmyadmin. Okay, the database doesn't exist here, it's not being found in my phpmyadmin here. So there is no database name test_db. There's no database like that. Okay, so MySql object or property is helping us to pull out where the error is coming from. So it is telling you that there is no such database in your phpmyadmin. So it's such a wonderful thing to do, very beautiful, easy to do. So make sure you type the same code as you see over here. Make sure you don't leave any space. Do it as you see on the screen. If you don't understand anything, leave it in the comment section and I will throw more light on that. Thank you very much for being with me in this very long video. I believe you've learned something from the video. Share the video with your friends. If you have not subscribed to the channel, I will urge you to do that for me, because this is the beginning of our database development. This is what I mean. This is what we are going to do, the project that I'm working on. Okay, so there are a lot of, let me show you, local hosts. So this dashboard, so this is the login screen. Let me log in and show you what we are going to learn. Okay, so you have to stay tuned. So this is what we'll be doing using PHP and other programming language. Okay, we'll be doing all this using programming language. I'm going to teach you step by step, so you need to stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so that when I upload any video, you'll be able to have access to that video and watch it and learn something good for yourself. See you. I love you all.